a medium to severe cold for like 4 days. Yeah, I was super severe cold for the first like 6 days. Yeah, so how far in here?
Got it.
PowerPoint's on here, you can click this, go to the next slide.
But no.
You can see the chat through here.
Like I got a positive test.
Which
That's
is
where
right here.
Lynn's gonna monitor the chat.
I never had a
Okay.
positive test.
And then you can see your participants there if you want.
Okay, cool.
I mean,
Awesome.
Okay, we're good to go.
Like a
We're good to go.
Thank you.
Right.
Or that too, yeah.
And it's recorded.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Kevin Barrett with Chicago Title. Many of you know Marlene, she's with Chicago Title, and many of you know Ryan Smith. He's also account manager for the branch across the street. He won't be here today, he'll be on the Zoom, he should be on the Zoom. And then Joette Joseph, and Joette is our branch manager across the street, and I'll let her kind of tell you about the years that she's been in, because that'll just get me in trouble.
No, I will.
And-
I will not tell you about the years I've been in.
But
Well, she started at 10, right?
yeah, right. So in terms of a lot of different deals, I mean, I've had deals with her that she's been able to just, put the fire out. There's definitely fires in escrow. And she's been able to handle a lot of different things, obviously with commercial, residential, all of the things that come up with, how to hold title, who should be holding title, who should sign on title, all of those things she's been able to just master and do it with grace. And that's what it's about, right? Making you look good to your client so you have an idea, and then your client looks like you're teamed with somebody that knows how to do this. So when they leave, they look at you being a resource for the real estate game, and the team around you is exactly what you want. Perfect and look like you. So this class today, and we'll do some more, is real informative, and I know that Joette's going to have a wealth of knowledge to share. So
Are you guys okay if I take my mask off the top? Are you gonna monitor the chat?
Well,
Kevin passed out a packet to you. First of all, just so I get an idea of the experience level here, who has been doing this for less than 2 years? Awesome, great career. I've been doing it for a very long time. When I hit 35 years, I said, that's it. I'm not saying anymore. It makes me sound old. And I'm fighting that every step of the way. So what I want to go over today is a title report, a preliminary report. And then I also passed out ways to hold title, who pays what, who pays title and escrow fees and transfer tax in each county, and a tax calendar, because I found that the tax year is one of the most difficult things for your buyers and sellers to understand, right? Everybody thinks that when we're in December, oh no, I paid for the year. No, the first installment is paid in December, not the second installment. So it's very confusing. And then I'm sure most of you are familiar with Measure E in San Jose. So I also put a chart in telling you how Measure E is calculated. And when you hit the $2 million mark in San Jose, in the city of San Jose only, there is a third transfer tax in addition to the county tax and the regular city tax. How that passed, I don't know. It was on the ballot, and I think people didn't understand what they were voting for. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So to start, if you can take a look at your preliminary report. All right. He said, press this button, so nothing's happening.
Lisa Smith is saying, I find Measure E so confusing.
It's very confusing. Wait, I think you did it. You did it.
That's right.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah.
We didn't print every single page of the preliminary report, or we didn't put, you have every single page in your packet for those of you who are here. Jackie, here. For those of you who are, for those of you who are watching on Zoom, we don't have every single page in here because it's like 25 pages, but I'll go over it briefly. The very first page tells you, well, let me do these bullet points. So the very first page tells you that this is an offer to give you title insurance. You cannot take this preliminary report and then sue us because something wasn't on here. You have to have the title policy. The importance of reviewing the preliminary report. Personally, I think it's so important that I don't even allow my assistant to do it. My previous assistant was with me for 24 years. She's since retired. I did not even let her review my preliminary reports. I do it every day myself. If there's something on the prelim that, like, maybe an old deed of trust, maybe your people think they have one loan on the property and there's 2 or 3 loans showing up on the property. I need time to get that cleared. We might have to contact the old lender. It could take 30 days for them to research an old loan and take it off. So I think it's really important. If you look on page 1 of the preliminary report, and let me go to that. Should have been here, right?
Yeah, no, it's because
Oh, there.
it's prompting me through the questions.
Sorry.
Ticklers. It's prompting me.
Sorry to interrupt,
This
but
page.
is there any
The
way?
first page of the prelim, your name would go at the top here. Mark and Jackie very nicely allowed me to use a prelim from one of their actual transactions. So it has Mark and Jackie on here. We have the property address. Right underneath the property address, it has the effective date. So that is our title, what we call the joint plant. Pretty much all of the title companies use the same title computer. We all get the information from the same place and we all pay into that. We all participate and we're partners in that joint plant. So we're always about a week behind because the county has to do all of their processing before they give the documents to us for us to put them in our system. The county processes by grantor and grantee. So they put the names in there. We want everything in there by the address. You can imagine if we had to search by names, it would be ridiculous, right? So we put it by the address or the parcel number, by the property itself. The only thing that is the name is a lien. Liens and judgments do not have legal descriptions. They go against your name. So if your name is John Smith, we're going to ask you for a statement of information because there's 1,000 other John Smiths in this county. We need to have your information. It's very labor intensive. We take the information that your John Smith completes on our form and we compare it manually to every single lien that comes up against John Smith to see if the information matches. Occasionally, we'll find liens that don't have enough information for us to clear them, specifically the unsecured tax liens. Santa Clara County is notorious for recording unsecured tax liens. They have no identifying information. So then we'll go back and we'll ask your party to sign an affidavit certifying that's not me. That's a different John Smith. I've never lived or done business at that address on that lien. It's not me. And we just take their word for it because there's nothing else we can do. But the dated date is the joint plant date. So if you get a prelim today, that date's probably a week ago. We will tell you right underneath the type of policy we're going to be issuing. The car contract defaults to the the ALTA homeowners policy, which is the highest coverage that we provide to an owner. And once again, throughout California, the policies are standard. So all of the title companies provide the same product. What we sell to you is our expertise and our knowledge. Our title department in this county is amazing. My title officer is probably the best I've ever worked with. So the ALTA homeowners policy in this case and the ALTA loan policy. Almost always it's an ALTA loan policy. The only time you wouldn't have an ALTA loan policy is if it was a private lender. They do not normally get an Alta loan policy, they get a CLTA loan policy. The only time you wouldn't have an Alta homeowners policy, we don't issue them to entities. So if you have an LLC going into title, we're not gonna give them an Alta homeowners policy, they'll get the CLTA owners policy. A trust is not considered a separate entity. So if you have your buyer going into title in a trust, they would still get the homeowner's policy. Then we have the estate, the interest. So it says, in this case, a fee. That's an old English term. It just means the highest form of ownership. So they have ultimate ownership. The other options are, the most common would be a leasehold. Sometimes on commercial, you'll see the land separate from the building. But generally, especially in residential, you will always see a fee or a condominium. If your property's in a planned unit development, that is still a single family. It is considered a single family home in a planned unit development. So you'll see a fee, and in your notes, we'll get to the notes in a minute, it will say a single family home. Sometimes lenders don't like that. No, it's a PUD. It's a single family home. We'll add the verbiage in a planned unit development to make the lender happy, but it is a single family home. Condominium is a legal term. And if you don't know the difference, on a single family home or a PUD, you own the land. So you own the building, you own the land. On a condo, you own a percentage of the entire, so a percentage of the tract with the right to use a unit. You don't actually own that unit, you own a percentage of all of the tract. That's the difference. So occasionally your appraiser will say it's a condo and they'll come back to us. I'm like, no, it's not a condo. If you look at your legal description on the next page, it will say all of lot 7. If it says all of lot whatever, it's not a condo. If it says an undivided interest, it's a condo. So, whether it's attached or not attached, immaterial, does not matter. It's whether you own the land or not. So back to page 1, we have the interest in the property, the vested interest. Those are just the owners. If it says as their interest may appear, that means they've done many deeds back and forth. We can't figure out what their percentages are. Usually attorneys do that. They're the worst. I hope nobody's an attorney in here because they really mess up our property sometimes. So they have to tell us what their percentages are. Then we have Exhibit A, which is the actual legal description. The legal description and the assessor's parcel number will match. If you look at the very back page, it will match your map.
So you want to move it forward on that? Or?
Oops, yes, I do. This is the legal description. All of lot 7, it's in tract 2491. And you'll see at the top, the APN is 407-11001. So if you go back to the map, sorry, I don't know how to make it bigger. Can you make it bigger? That's all right. So you'll see the 1 with an underline. That's the assessor's parcel number. Those numbers sometimes change. The assessor sometimes changes the map, especially if you have a property that's close by, that's developed. They're going to make a whole new map. And that's the number that's on the tax bill. That number can change. The lot and tract will not ever change. That lot 7, you'll see this lot 7 at the top of that lot. And PIQ, by the way, means property in question. That's the property that we're talking about, the property that's the basis of this report. The lot and tract will never change. Going back to your exceptions.
Come here, Cole.
You muted
Huge.
sound.
Oh, you muted me.
Okay, I unmuted you.
Sorry.
again.
Sorry, guys. The tax year starts July 1, but the taxes become a lien on the property on January 1. We don't get the bills until the end of September or the 1st of October, but they become a lien January 1. So from January 1 until the tax bill comes out, you'll always see a lien not yet due and payable for the, well, this was an old title report. So it says 2021 tax year. Right now, it would say 22, 23 tax year, if you were gonna get a prelim dated today, okay? It becomes a lien, but we can't pay it, we don't know the amounts, we can't estimate, we have no idea what the taxes are gonna be. In this case, we have the next one is the actual current tax bill. It will tell you the year, and then the installment amounts. On all of our prelims, on all of our sale transactions, not refis, but on a sale, when you get your report electronically, there will be blue boxes. You can click on any of those boxes and get the underlying document. So if you clicked on this item number 2, where it says tax identification number, if you clicked on that, the tax bill would come up. In San Jose, you can see all the line items when you click on the tax bill. Yes, Jackie?
I just had a question, because it used to be that you had to ask for the exceptions to be defined. You don't have to do that anymore.
It's on every report. We link every single sale transaction.
Am I incorrect in saying that it used to be?
Way back in the day, we've linked them automatically for years.
Well, I'm way back.
But you can see on the tax bill the line items. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the tax bills, but it'll tell you, vector control and open space. And San Jose is the only city that has the garbage bills on the tax bill. We don't ever get separate garbage bills in San Jose.
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
So when there's you're probably gonna get to, there's an easement for utilities. How I explain it to my clients when they see that is, when they say, what does that mean? I'm like, well, that means that you have power lines behind your house, and if they go down, PG&E has the right to go fix them. Like, what is the right way to explain when there's a PG&E easement? Or
The right way to explain an
water
easement, it means someone has the right to come into your property for their to work on their lines or their underground cables or.
To maintain.
And typically they would give you notice, but if it was emergency, they could come do it.
They usually give you notice.
Okay.
I happen to have in my backyard, power lines, and they'll call and say, oh, our backyard's locked, so they have to call, but they'll say, we want to come out tomorrow, or sometimes we're here right now, can we come in? They don't have to give you notice, they normally do. Item number 3, you will see on every single prelim from every single company. Because we're telling you, there may be supplemental tax bills out there that we don't know about yet. I'm sure that you know when a sale occurs or when any transfer occurs, the property is reassessed, almost any transfer. The property is reassessed, but it takes the assessor about 6 months to catch up with it. So by the time they catch up with it, we could be on to the next transaction, especially with your flippers. And I noticed the new car contract says any supplemental bills that post after the close of escrow must be dealt with between the buyer and seller directly. The old one said that, but this one's in bold. So it makes it much nicer because sometimes they'll come back to us. If a buyer comes back to us because they got a supplemental bill that they feel didn't belong to them, it was due to a previous transaction, they can always call the assessor's office and say, I didn't buy the property until this date, and the activity date on the supplemental bill was prior to that. They will prorate it and put the part that doesn't belong to them, the part that belonged to the seller, on what's called the unsecured roll. So they'll go after the seller for that money. Your buyer does not have to pay it. This one says any other liens or bonds that could arise because of special assessments. you know, every time we vote, they ask for more money, right? So the new tax bill might have line items that the old tax bill doesn't have.
So going back to what you just said on the flippers, when you know it's a flip, we should really make sure that we're explaining that to our clients, to really look at your tax bill, because they might just get it and pay it and not realize it.
Well, it'll be a supplemental bill.
Right, but we should tell them to really pay attention to that. 'cause we don't
Really
sign
pay
anything
attention to
that
those
way.
supplemental bills because it will tell you the activity date. It will tell you the date that caused that a supplemental bill to be generated. If your buyer didn't own it on that date, they should contact the county. They don't normally make that adjustment automatically. You have to tell them about it. Now we're into the easements. I know you were questioning easements. Light and air easement means, in this case, the southerly 25 feet. So if you go back to the map, the southerly is along the front. See, if you see the north-south arrow up at the top here. So this means you have to have at least 25 feet between the front lot line and the front of the house. So if your people want to increase the size of the house, that's fine, but know that they have to leave 25 feet. And then 12.5 feet on the side along Old Adobe Road. Public utility easement. Once again, those are for the utilities. It could be PG&E, could be sewer. Hi.
Hey, sorry, I just wanted to go back to the light and air easement. Is there any situation where, let's say, an HOA or something might have more restrictive rules that wouldn't be on the
Absolutely.
title?
Yes, the HOA might have different rules.
Okay.
These are what came from the map, from the track map that the builder put on.
Okay. So just because it's in here doesn't mean that those are the final restrictions for the buyer.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just what's of record. Our title report reflects what's of record. Sometimes you'll see items that we knew about that aren't of record, but it will state that it's on there for whatever reason. I had a deed of trust recently. They told me there were 2 loans on the property. I could only find one. And come to find out, the lender had, or the title company that the lender had used, recorded it in the wrong county. So now we knew about it. We showed it on our prelim with a subparagraph saying this was recorded in the wrong county. So did it really affect? Not really. The lender wouldn't have been able to foreclose without re-recording it or going to court. Back to the light and air easements. If you are under the flight path of the airport, you may see restrictions as far as height. And that's because you're under the flight path. Wire clearance easement, those are obviously overhead wires. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Almost all properties have covenants, conditions, and restrictions. It does not mean it's in a homeowners association. It's the restrictions the builder put on. All of our CC&Rs have to have a cover page that in like 14-point print that says that anything discriminatory no longer applies, right? Because some of those from the 40s or 50s literally say you have to be Caucasian to live there. Unless, it always says unless you're a servant, then you can live there. I'm not joking. This one's from the 60s.
For the screen.
Can you
As
please?
you're going through it.
Yes, I can. No, I don't want to stare, thank you. So we were just talking about the easements, shown as item 5, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, shown as item 6. And like I said, those are what the builder put on the property. If it's a homeowners association, they may have been modified many times. If it is a homeowners association, you can usually tell because it says there are dues. Just regular CC&Rs, there's nobody to pay dues to. When you won't see CC&Rs is on the old properties, downtown San Jose, downtown Palo Alto. Those properties will not normally have covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Item 7 is a deed of trust. We always show, I'm sorry.
Do you mean older than like the 40s and 50s?
Yes,
Okay.
I mean like the early 1900s. Yeah. The deeds of trust always show the original amount of the loan, or in the case of a reverse mortgage or a home equity line of credit, the amount available. The HELOC, I know when we send out our information, let your sellers know if they have a HELOC on the property, they must let us know. Even if it has a zero balance, we have to contact them, we have to pay that off, and we're gonna close it. So if they think they need that money to buy their new house, have them pull the money out first. Because once we request a payoff statement, they're gonna freeze it. On a reverse mortgage, you will see 2 deeds of trust. There will only be 1 loan, but there's always 2 deeds of trust. One is in favor of the actual lender, and the second one is in favor of housing and urban development. It's like that every time. I have no idea why. Item 8 is because our seller is in a trust. So if nobody is deceased, if James and Diane are still alive, we will take a certification from them saying that they are the trustees, it's their trust. If one of them is deceased, we need a copy of the trust. We need to know who the successor trustees are. We cannot assume that the survivor is the only trustee. Sometimes they have to have a second trustee no matter what. We don't make that determination, the trust does. So that's why we have to see a copy of it. We will also need an original death certificate. If someone's in title who is not alive, we have to take them out of the public records. The only way to do that is to record an affidavit of death, and the county requires an original death certificate. So let the sellers know that as well. If you know somebody's no longer alive, please let us know right away. There's nothing worse than asking about that person to the survivor and finding out that they're dead. It's just it's terrible for us. We feel bad. The other person feels bad. Not a good situation. We'd rather hear it from you.
Can you back up a little bit? You said the person on title is deceased, a copy of the trust, you need to see the copy of the trust, is that right?
If the person in title is, if anybody in title in the trust is, or in title and they're holding title in a trust, yes, we need to see a copy of the trust. The next page has the notes. The notes will tell you, well, note number 1 tells you that we will not insure property that's going to be used for marijuana distribution, preparation, anything marijuana related, because of the federal laws still being illegal. Even though state says it's okay, federal doesn't, so we won't insure that.
So those are just never insured, those properties that have the
We won't insure if we know the property is going to be used for that, correct?
Is this a residential rule? Is it something different for commercial? I'm just curious.
Residential, they usually don't tell anybody. I would say that's more for commercial.
Asking for a friend.
As soon as you go into contract, we tell title the buyer's names. If the prelim is more than a month old, I ask for an updated prelim. I don't know, every escrow officer does things slightly differently. We all get to the same place, but we might take a detour or two. But I'll ask for an updated prelim, and we always send the names to title, the buyer's names to title, to make sure the buyer doesn't have liens against them. We don't want to get down to closing and then find out they have an IRS lien and now we're scrambling. We'd rather know right up front. And when we do order an updated prelim, then the buyer's names would be in here. Some counties have what's called a documentary transfer tax affidavit. Basically, it says the same thing that a preliminary change of ownership form says, but they feel the need to put it on a separate document. I don't know why. We hate it. It's I don't know. I hate it. San Mateo County has one. Some of the northern counties have one. Santa Clara County thankfully does not have one, but it's a form that we either have to have the buyer or seller sign certifying the sales price and the transfer tax that's being paid. Same thing the change of ownership form says. Note number 5 tells you that this is a single family home, has the property address. We don't put the zip codes because we're not insuring that address, we're insuring the legal description. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the pockets of San Jose and Campbell, where the street address might be Campbell and the property is actually in the city of San Jose, or vice versa. There's a little tiny section of Saratoga that's the same way. It's awful, but nobody understands it. It's confusing to the lender. They just can't grasp the fact that it's not the same. The mailing address is determined by the post office. So if the Campbell post office delivers your mail, even though you live in the city of San Jose, your mailing address will be Campbell. I don't make the rules. It's so confusing.
It comes up a lot.
It comes up frequently in San Jose and Campbell. I've only seen it a few times. There's a little tiny area, like I said, of Saratoga. And the reason I know that is because a guy got so upset with me one day when I said he wanted his legal description to say Saratoga and not pay city of San Jose transfer tax. And I said, no, I'm sorry, you live in the city of San Jose. And he said, I live in Saratoga. And I'm like, no, you don't. And he said, well, I'm going to XYZ company. And I'm like, I'm sure they're going to tell you the same thing, but okay. So just be aware of why that happens. The reason we have note 6 in here that tells you if there have been any transfers within the last 24 months is because the buyer's lender always wants to know that. They want to know if the property's been flipped. If it was just sold for $500,000 and now it's being sold for $1.5 million, they're going to go, whoa, 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 what's going on here? Oh, item 7 is just telling you that we do have to put the cover page on the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. The next page, we do require, Chicago Title is all about protecting the consumer. That is why we have our new InHere app. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. We have our new app called InHere. It's a secure portal. We go directly to your buyers and sellers. It's very, very secure. The other way that we protect them is we only use company approved notaries. It's very difficult to become a notary for Chicago Title. We want to know that you've been background checked, and you know, a notary has to renew their notary every 4 years. We require that they renew their background check and everything with us every year. So if you have a notary that got in trouble last year, you're not going to work with Chicago Title anymore. Or if we had a bad experience with you, we're going to take you off of the approved list. We're all about the consumer. We want to protect the consumer's information. Item 9 just says that we did use the property address to locate the property, but we're ensuring the legal description. And oh, my favorite, item 10, FinCEN. I don't know if you guys are familiar with FinCEN. It used to be a big dark secret. We were not allowed to ever talk about why we did what we did. Now they've eliminated that requirement. We can say why we're asking for this information. If you buy property in an entity, so a partnership, an LLC, not a corporation. Well, I take that back, a corporation, a small corporation. If you're a Fortune 500 company or you're on the stock exchange, we do not require this information, but any other entity, I think there's only like 5 or 6 counties in the entire country where the feds ask for this information. Santa Clara County is one of them because it's a very, very high net worth county, a very high sale price county. So if you buy in an entity and you do not get a bank loan, so you either pay cash or you get a loan from a private individual or a hard money lender, there is a separate form that you have to fill out, basically telling the feds, everybody involved, anybody who has at least a 25% interest in that entity has to complete this form and provide a copy of their driver's license. It's very intrusive. We don't like it. You know, we are basically acting at the command of the federal government, which we do a lot, but we fight back a lot, while they're trying to expand that to the entire country. And it's any property that sells for over $300,000, which is everything in this county, right? The next page is the wire fraud alert. You guys have those, we have those. Yes,
Sorry, I'm writing everything down.
that's okay.
So just to reiterate, the FinCEN, it's if it's purchased as an entity, so LLC, whatever, different types of entities, not a trust, and doesn't use a lender at all, or
Doesn't use an institutional lender.
Okay,
So if you're buying in an entity and you're not getting a loan from an institutional lender,
okay,
you're getting a hard money loan or a private loan or no loan, we have to get this information.
got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. The wire fraud alert. This is just to let them know, we used to put our wire instructions in the prelim, but we keep those very close to our chest now. So this is just to let you know, just like your wire fraud does, not to take information from anybody but us. Then we have all of the fine print stuff. Honestly, I never go through this with the buyers and sellers. You probably don't either, but they're welcome to read it. Every now and then I will have a buyer who does read it, and you know, I spend a lot of time on the phone with them, but I would say it's not even 1 in 100. Every now and then you'll get the random engineer. And then the map, which we've already gone over. Are you guys on the Zoom? If you have any questions, please let me know. Nobody?
A lot of people are asking about the printouts. We'll send those out after the class later this afternoon.
I can see it in my inbox.
Oh, they probably sent you the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that only will have the prelim that Joette went over, but there's some other documents that we wanted to hand out.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get those together with Chris, and then Chris will send them to you guys. So you guys all have them.
I also included the 8 common ways to hold title. When I send information to the buyer through our secure portal, I will send a separate email, not secure, to the buyer and CC the buyer's agent saying, I just sent you our wire instructions through our secure portal that will also ask you some questions. This document will help you determine the best way to hold title. So that's in there. You can always reach out to me if you have any questions on how to hold title. The customary practices per county, who pays what, who pays title, who pays escrow, who pays transfer tax, and it also tells you the cities that have transfer tax. Almost always it's split 50-50 on the city tax. The tax calendar tells you that the tax year starts July 1, not January 1. First installment is from July through December. The second installment, January through June. The first installment must be paid by April 10th, the first installment must be paid by December 10th, unless it's a weekend or a holiday, then it's the very next day. And the second installment by April 10th. It sounds backwards, I know. And it's right at Christmas and tax time, the worst. I don't make the rules. And then the Measure E. And it'll just give you a little formula on how to count Measure E. It starts at 2 million. So if you're at 1,999,999, it doesn't apply. The minute you hit 2 million, it applies. And I get a lot of calls on that. So if you need help with the calculations, just call me.
With regards to all of those pieces, we do have those in PDF. So feel free to reach out to us and we can send that to you, email.
If you send me an email, and for those of you that are on Zoom, yes, my email's not on here. It's Joette, JOETTE, .Joseph, JOSEPH, @CTT.com. If you email me, I'll send you copies of all of these documents. I just wanted to go over some red flags also. California withholding. Who knows what California withholding is?
That's true. I mean, that's what they get you.
If you sell property that is not your primary residence, if you have not claimed it as your primary residence for 2 out of the last 5 years, and you have a gain, the state wants withholding through escrow. There's 2 ways to calculate withholding. it can be based on the sales price at 3 1/3%, so 3.33%, or on the gain at 12.3%. It used to be until last year or 2 years ago that you just told us what the gain was, and we went off that. Now you have to fill out the form to prove it, and we have to send it to the state. So if your seller is selling property that you know is not their primary residence, they haven't lived there for 2 out of the last 5 years, let us know right away, because we'll send the form out. If they have an accountant, we suggest that they work with their accountant. If not, they can go online or figure out how to calculate what their gain is. Or, and if they, it's just like any other withholding from your paycheck. If you don't owe that much at the end of the year, you're gonna get it back when you file next year. Same situation. Marital status. One of the biggest things that we have to talk to agents about is adding a wife to title. It's usually the wife, I don't know why, but it's usually the wife. So the husband will sign the contract, and then we'll get down to close, and they'll say, oh, I want to add my wife. Well, your wife's not on the contract. If you're not on the contract, you're not a buyer. And they'll go, but she's not on the loan. Okay, we don't care about the loan. We care who's the buyer. The loan's the loan. Anybody can be on the loan. I can be on your loan. I don't have to be on your property. I can be on your loan. The buyer is who the buyer is. So whoever is on the contract is who we're going to show as the buyer. If you have somebody that's married and they're really not going to be entitled, then California being a community property state, we need an interspousal deed from the spouse.
What page are you on?
I'm not on a page.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm just talking.
Mhm.
If you're paying cash, you can actually take title without your spouse, but we will put an exception in the policy. You won't be able to do anything with the property. You won't be able to get a loan, and you won't be able to sell the property until your spouse signs. The exception to that is if you take title in a trust. If you take title in a trust, we don't ask you what your marital status is. So if you have a separate trust and you don't want your spouse to know about it, we're not going to ask you what your marital status is. I mean, we might ask, but we're not going to require an interspousal.
So then you have to, the trust has to be on the contract too.
Say that again.
The trust would have to be on the contract too.
The trust needs to be on the contract, and you can't have a joint trust and think only one of you is going to be on there. I mean, your spouse is going to have an interest automatically.
The interspousal document, is that when the wife would give up her rights to the ownership?
An interspousal deed is the same as a grant deed, except it's between spouses or registered domestic partners. We don't see domestic partners too much anymore. Everybody's married now pretty much, but it does apply. And it gives up any interest that you have or that you may acquire in the future.
Okay, okay, gotcha, thank you.
Once again, if you have a seller in title who's deceased, please let us know right away so we can deal with that. Homeowners Association, most of you want the HOA docs before you put all of your disclosures online. 99% of the management companies require payment up front. I would say 75% of them allow for credit card payments. We still have some that you have to give us a check. If you give us a check and you want to be reimbursed through escrow, we're totally happy to do that. Or you can get a check directly from your sellers. We'll send it with our request to the homeowners association or to the management company. Please don't send it in separately. They need it with our request.
Can I ask a quick question, just going back to adding someone to title?
Yes.
Is it best to do that during the transaction, or is it better to wait until after and then add, or does it depend?
What kind of, who would you be adding to title?
Like if someone wants to add the wife to title and their name's not on there, it's not on the contract, right? So is it easier to wait until after it closes and then have them add it? Or is it better to do it during the transaction?
Well, you're going to pay more for the recording if you do it after. The way the law is right now, there's a $75 per document fee up to a maximum of $225. But that is waived when there's transfer tax. So if they record it afterwards, it's going to cost more, number one. And some counties, I just ran into this in San Mateo. I didn't know this was happening. I've only seen it once before, and it was in some little podunk county. And it happened to be a gay couple. And honestly, my first thought was that they made us pay transfer tax because they didn't like the fact that it was a little podunk county and it was a gay couple. That was my own observation, but apparently not, because San Mateo County is now charging transfer tax between spouses. When you record a deed from yourself to yourself and your spouse. I just had that and they made them pay tax. I don't think it's right, but it is what it is. They would not record without it. So I would say upfront, if you're gonna put this spouse in title, do it upfront.
And what do you need to do that? Like what does title need to do that?
They just need to be added to the contract.
To the contract, okay, okay. All right.
Can I make an observation there? Joette, this is Mark Miano.
Hi, Mark. Absolutely.
Yeah, Lisa, you're also going to need, if you're going to add a spouse or any party to a contract after it's been ratified by the seller, you're going to have to go back and have that buyer that you're adding sign every form, all the disclosures, everything. Okay, just so you know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I was just giving you what escrow needs. Mark's gonna give you what you guys need.
Can I ask a question, Joanne?
Yes.
Is it different if like, whoever buys and then they want to switch to a trust after purchase?
There's no transfer tax if you're transferring to your own trust.
Okay,
Yes, there is not. But that $75 fee applies.
okay.
So
That was $75 per document up to how much?
up to $225.
Okay.
So if you record a deed as part of a sale transaction, the first page is $25 in Santa Clara County. If it's not part of a sale transaction, the first page is $100. So it can add up quickly. If there's a power of attorney being used, please let us know right away, especially if somebody is out of the country, because a lot of the embassies are not open, or it takes weeks and weeks to get an appointment. They have to sign, I don't want to say have to. Generally, we require that they sign at an embassy. There are some ways around it. It's a little convoluted. I won't go into it right now. Vesting. If you have questions on vesting, there's several ways to hold title. If you're holding title as joint tenants and you automatically have an equal interest if you're holding title as joint tenants. And if somebody dies, the property goes to the survivors. You can have 2 people as joint tenants, you can have 10 people as joint tenants, doesn't matter. If you're holding title as tenants in common and somebody dies, it's going to have to go to probate. So those are just things that you have to balance out. You want this person to get your property, or you want somebody else to get it. If you're holding title as tenants in common, your portion can be in a trust. Many lenders do not allow for multiple trusts in title. I don't know why, but we see it over and over. They just won't allow it. So they'll have to take title and then put it in the trust after. If there's one trust, they don't seem to have a problem with it anymore, but multiple trusts they do. Solar, if there's solar on the property and it's leased, let us know. We have to contact the solar company. We recently had a transaction last year where there was some miscommunication, I'll say, and the buyer didn't want to take over the solar and the seller thought they were. Well, we're talking thousands of dollars, right? So we have to know upfront. We have to make sure that the correct documentation is signed and that everybody's on the same page. If it's owned solar, we don't care. If they paid for it, it's owned, it's part of the property. 1031 exchange.
Excuse me,
I don't know what that
Joette.
is.
Hi, it's Mark again. Could you back up to the power of attorney and
Yes.
just explain the situation where a lot of people say, oh, we've got a power of attorney already? Could you explain that you guys have to review it and or draft it if it's, because sometimes it's just for medical and that kind of thing?
Well, if you think there's a power of attorney, we definitely have to see it. We need title approval if it wasn't prepared by us. And if it was definitely more than a year old, but sometimes even a few months old, we'll need additional documentation to say that it's still valid, that it's still in full force and effect. Obviously, we don't like to use power of attorney. We always want to know why. We'll always ask you, why can't these people sign themselves? Because the risk for us is much greater when somebody's signing with the power of attorney. Does that answer you, Mark?
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it before regarding the embassies. If you have a client whose job is to travel or they're planning a vacation, get them into the title company to execute power of attorney before they leave.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Sure, thank you.
A 1031 exchange. It can generally not be used for a primary residence unless a portion of the property is also being used for business purposes or is being rented. And by being rented, I mean that they actually claimed the rent, which I don't think that happens too often. Otherwise, they can't do a 1031 exchange. So we have a partner company or a sister company, which is Investment Property Exchange, IPX 1031. If you have a seller that's thinking about doing an exchange, please make sure they use a big exchange company like IPX so they know their money is safe. We have seen exchange companies go out of business. The last time we saw it, 10, 12 years ago, was so big that the US Congress had to get involved to get these people extra time to come up with the money because they lost their money, right? So they gave them time to come up with that money that was sitting in the exchange company so that they could still do their exchange. So it's a big deal. Our sister company obviously is backed by our parent company, which is Fidelity National Financial. Your money's going to be very safe. We're a Fortune 300 company. Let us know as soon as you know that they're going to do an exchange, because our documents are prepared differently. If your seller's doing an exchange, the exchange company becomes the seller on the escrow documents, and any money has to go to the exchange company. Otherwise, if the seller wants, they can get some money if they want to, but they're going to be taxed on that at 3 1/3%. So if they say, oh, I want to do an exchange, but I want to keep out 500,000, that's great. We're going to send in, based on the 500,000, 3 1/3% to the state out of that 500,000. Statement of information, that goes back to having a common name. We only ask for a statement of information if title asks us for one. Now with our InHere system, we do ask for the personal identifying information. Since we've been using that system, I have not had to get a statement of information from anyone. We send them the information that comes, once the seller fills out the information, it comes, oh, give me 1 second. That information comes to us in a PDF. We forward that to title, and they've been able to clear all the liens with that.
We want to touch on that in here. Marlene, why don't we brush up on this? I know it's new and it's something maybe somebody doesn't know, but.
So our InHere product is kind of like Joette was saying earlier about, making sure that, Chicago Times' best interest is making sure that you guys are safe and protected. So we started with a program called InHere, and it's our platform where you will be, everything will be transmitted securely. So that was the first step in securing the transaction, was basically making sure that our wires are going to be safe. So we just initiated the second phase to that, which was the beginning of the year. And that is the same InHere product. And what's cool about that product is now you will get invited in. Once you open an escrow, you'll be invited into the platform. It's almost like your bank where you have to provide that, it's a 2-factor authentication. Once you're in there, you're going to be able to see your transaction. So if you say, hey, I wonder if Joette sent me the prelim, well, you could actually log in there and go, oh yeah, look, the prelim's done, and you can download that document. So it's gonna save you time with a lot of emails. You'll have one place to look. It kind of reminds me of like your Sky Slope or Command, where you could go in there and look at all your documents. So it's pretty cool, and that's probably our phase 2, and there's more to come.
Yes, and the real key is the consumer, right? It gets you away from any kind of wire information that goes between your email, and for the consumer, it'll have a portal for them as well. So those tax documents, it's a place where they can actually pull up those tax documents at the end of the year. It's an app on your phone, everything's kind of going to that, and this is what this is, it's called InHere. You as agents will then have records that you can go back into those escrows and pull those documents up as well. So it's just kind of the state of the art thing that we're really kind of staying in touch with. The key to it is security, right? We're putting $1 million, I think, a year into just the security piece of it to make sure that the consumer is safe and obviously the agent is safe. There's definitely some things out there, and I think we talked about it, and Mark talked about it, that people are getting sued, people being realtor, because they've disclosed some sort of wire thing, and that the buyer was somebody who didn't know, and they put the wrong information. Somebody got a hold of that email, next thing you know, all that money went somewhere else. Because it came from the real estate side, they were liable for it. So what we're trying to do as a, Fortune 300 company is to make sure that we eliminate that from you. You still top of the food chain, but that information you don't need to know. It's just between us and the consumer.
And we won't even send our wire instructions to the agent anymore. We will only send it directly to the person that is sending the money.
Over $1 billion has been fraudulently taken through real estate.
But
transactions.
none, zero, since we've started in here, zero.
Let us know that's coming, right?
Yes.
A couple questions. One, since we're talking about in here, how does that work with your assistants? Does everybody have access to, they do too, and does that work?
Our assistants all have access, yes.
But our-
There.
So are you.
Oh,
Yeah.
your assistants, yes, everybody that you tell us. So like, if you're representing the buyer, when you send us the contract or when you send us an email, put your assistant on there or tell us who your assistant is. I usually, when I send page 10 or now page 16, I'll say, please let me know if you have an assistant or a TC. Once we add them to the file, they'll get the invite as well.
Okay, and then I have a second question, back a little bit. What if, I'm gonna go back to the FERPTA, what if someone's a foreign investor, do we have to let you know to hold back those funds? How does that work if they are a foreign investor?
A foreign
And
investor,
they're selling and they're not,
if your seller is foreign, they need to apply for a tax ID number, like early, because it takes a while.
and what if you're representing a buyer and they're buying and that check box is that they are a foreign investor?
Well,
How do you protect the buyer?
then if you're representing a buyer and there's a foreign investor, the buyer should talk to their accountant because we cannot fill out those forms. The state of California loves escrow. They work with us, they talk to us, they like to partner with us. They know we give them bazillions of dollars every year, right? The feds won't do anything with us, nothing. So the buyer has to fill out that form because ultimately it's the buyer's responsibility. So if you're gonna buy a property that has a foreign seller, I would definitely tell them to talk with their accountant so they can fill out the forms correctly. Because we are not supposed to fill them out. Great question. Do you guys have any more questions? Yes.
I have a question going back towards the beginning. And I asked this because I used to be licensed and do business up in Seattle. And there was one type of easement that was pretty common that went with the house instead of with the person. And I know that, not easement, lien. That probably makes it make more sense. So liens are usually attached to the person. When the house sells, they follow the person, not the house. Are there any?
No, once they attach to the house, so if you have a lien against you, it automatically attaches to any property you own. If you sell that property, it's still on the property. It doesn't
Okay.
go off the property.
Are there? But when, at the point of sale, the liens are
We clear them,
clear them. Okay,
we pay them, or,
yeah.
I mean, Yeah, we have to pay them. We have to, or get a release. If nothing's owing, we
Okay.
have to get a release.
So there are certain types of liens that aren't closed out at the point of sale, they continue with the property. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything like that here. Super common in Seattle.
No.
That's fine.
Everything, if you have any sort of a lien on you in the last 10 years, so most liens last for 10 years. It will automatically attach to the property as soon as it goes against you. The only difference is if you, if you buy a property and you have a lien against you, it's going to automatically attach to the new property as well. It attaches to any property you own in the county.
Right.
So sometimes a lender will think somebody has a lien against them, but maybe it's in a different county. We won't know about it. We only know about what's recorded in this county.
Okay.
I mean, assuming the property's in this county. If the property's in San Francisco, then the lien has to be recorded in that county. Anything else? Anybody online? No questions. Mark?
I actually have a quick question.
Okay.
Back to if you have like an all cash buyer and the form that they need to fill out, is that something that title, that escrow normally handles directly with the client, or
What
how do you
form
get
do you
that
mean?
information? Or
Oh, you mean the FinCEN form?
Yes.
Yes, we will deal with them directly.
Okay, and you guys do we need to have that for a file, or?
No, we won't release that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? You guys had great
Good
questions.
stuff.
Jackie, I can't believe you have nothing else.
No, you're just doing such a good job.
And I think everybody got Joette's email. Right.
I actually put it in the chat too, and Chris recorded this, so you can always look at it later too.
And if you need copies of the PDFs that are in there, seek us out and we'll get that for you as well. You bet.
I'm always available if you guys have any questions.
We're right across the street.
Yeah, we're right across the street. Give me a call. I'm always there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you for asking questions.
Sorry, but also thank you.
No,
for answering
I'm
them.
always the question asker, right? And I've had in managers meetings, I've had other managers say, thank you for always asking the questions that we're thinking. I'm like, well, why don't you ask?
Actually, I got a
I'm
text
writing
from
down.
someone on the phone. Do you ask them those questions?
See?
I appreciate you answering them.
I called Joette. She's good at all those things.
She was,
Yeah.
What's that?
no, I was just saying, you know, people who didn't understand Prop 20 don't realize 2% from Prop